Today on Pro Church Daily, we're talking about 3 Bible verses that support technology in churches.
Well, hey there, and welcome to Pro Church Daily, the show where in 10 minutes or less, you'll get your daily dose of tips and tactics to help your church share the message of Jesus while we try and navigate the biggest communication shift that we've seen in the last 500 years. I'm your host, Alex Mills. I'm joined as always by the boss man. It's Brady Shearer. And today we're talking about 3 Bible verses that support technology in churches.
We wanted to give a biblical foundation, Alex, for why we care so much about digital media. So much so that we started a whole company around it and do daily content sharing about it. What is the biblical foundation for why we do this? Now, in my research for this episode of Pro Church Daily, I came across a number of different articles in Google that were not exactly in favor of using technology in churches. Just to explain, if you're part of Pro Church Nation, this may be a given for you, but I think it's important to understand that this isn't a given for everyone. Here are some examples. 3 different titles of articles that I stumbled across in my research trying to find favorable things about technology in church. Turn down that microphone and preach from your soul. This whole article is how if you use a microphone to preach, it is somehow less valid than if you just yell without a microphone.
It's the devil's tool.
Second article I found, my take, technology could bring down the church. Okay. And then this one.
This is the best one.
Should be noted, this was in all caps.
Yes.
God hates technology.
Yes, he does. It was created by sinful men, and therefore he must hate it.
I think it's important to understand how many people still think that tech as a whole is dangerous. Let's talk about 3 different passages, chapters, Bible verses from Scripture that create a strong foundation for why we do what we do, leveraging digital tools and digital mediums to share the hope and message of Jesus, recognizing that it's a timeless message being shared through timely mediums. We're not saying that you should change the gospel. We're saying that we should use the tools available to us, as we're going to see Christians and apostles throughout centuries have done. First example, probably the most classic example, is the Apostle Paul preaching in Acts 17, and he's preaching to Stoic and Epicurean philosophers. And what he does is, he doesn't just share the traditional gospel message that he would, but he uses their understanding of Greek philosophy as a springboard to get them to the full gospel message. And this idea of contextualization is what is observed in this chapter in Acts, the early church, the Apostle Paul. What he's doing is he recognizes that he's on one side of the spectrum, and these Greek philosophers are on the other side of the spectrum. And they have a different understanding, a different set of basic knowledge than he does. And he can't just go up to them. Like, I was driving by a car the other day. No, it was a big giant truck. It was like this 18-wheeler. And had this tent over top. And on the back it said, God is the only mediator between man. Jesus is the only mediator between God and man. I was like, well, that's a theological truth that I think mostly people will not understand. Like, if you haven't gone to Bible college, if you're not traditionally trained in theology, as Alex and I are formally trained, that is just a nonsensical statement. And so what Paul did was, he was like, okay, these philosophers, these individuals, they do not have the foundational knowledge that I do. If I want to get them from here to there, I need to start where they already are. I need to start with their understanding and then bridge the gap. And so he quotes these Greek philosophers. He starts with where they are and says, this is how you understand things. Here's how I understand things. Contextualization exemplified by Paul.
I think this is such a great example of using a timely medium to communicate that timeless message, and we see it all throughout Scripture. That's why so many of the parables are like agricultural in nature, is because a lot of the people that were hearing these stories and these kingdom truths were working in fields and working in agriculture, so it made sense. And we're gonna talk about sowing seed in a minute, but it made sense to talk about sowing plants because that was their business, and so it's kind of like that entry point to reveal a kingdom truth and to ultimately talk about Jesus, this timeless message, but using a timely medium like Greek philosophy or like agriculture to kind of like level the playing field and say, yeah, I totally get where you're at, and let's speak the same language so that I can tell you the greatest story ever told.
Second scripture that we wanted to use as an example is the parable of the sower. And this parable is in all of the synoptic gospels. So it's Matthew 13, it's Mark 4, it's Luke 8. And just to summarize this parable that many of us know very well, basically a sower is sowing seeds 4 different types of ground. You've got the hard ground, the stony ground, the thorny ground, and the good ground.
Yeah.
And based on the ground where these seeds are being sowed, they all yield or reap a different yield. So the hard ground, nothing's growing there. The stony ground, it grows for a little bit, then it perishes. The good ground, that's where the good seeds are growing into great plants. And this has been traditionally interpreted correctly as this is the hearts of a person. So, you might share the same gospel to someone who's ready to hear, and it could produce good fruit, good seed. You could share that same message to someone who's not there yet, and it might not turn into anything.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is we need to keep sowing our seeds no matter the harvest, because we're not in control of the harvest, we're controlling how many seeds we sow.
Yeah.
But I think that what's great about stories is that they can have multiple meanings that are equally truthful.
Yeah, it's both and.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what's so great. That's why Jesus taught through stories, because he's like, I got to take this crazy, large, eternal truth and share it through something that's going to be timeless throughout the centuries. And what I see in this parable, alongside the most popular understanding and interpretation, is that just as you sow a seed in like the heart of somebody, it's also where you sow the seed.
Yeah.
And so the hard ground might be a medium where nobody is paying attention anymore, right? Like you can sow seed on the radio, let's say, but that might not produce nearly the yield as sowing seeds on Facebook or on digital mediums and tools where people are paying so much attention. You could set up a billboard and you'd have to sow a lot of seed just to get that billboard, and a couple of people could see it and maybe 1 or 2 plants grow. But if you sowed that same seed elsewhere where attention is being paid on scales that we have never seen before in human history, it can reap that much better of a harvest.
Yeah, and in this technological and digital shift that we're going through right now, there are so many different platforms. It seems there's a new platform all the time, and so I think churches are going to have to get into this process of sowing small amount of seeds here and there and kind of testing it, saying, what kind of ground is this? Like what kind of fruit is this platform going to produce for us? So sowing seed maybe into YouTube for a while, it's, maybe that's not working for our church, but Facebook and Instagram is producing great fruit. So let's double down, let's plant more of our seed there. So I think it's going to kind of be like this as new platforms arise and technology advances, like testing this different ground and seeing, what is this ground even like?
Smart. Final scripture is the classic Great Commission, Matthew 28, go and make disciples. And the operative term here, the verb, is go, which is an action word. It's a verb. It requires you to actually do something. And when we look at the earliest apostles, going meant literally walking on a mission trip to another part of the continent.
Yeah.
It meant literally getting up and walking. And I think that we are so privileged in 2018 and beyond because we can now go into all the world with just the click of a button.
Yeah.
And I think an emphasis for so long has been placed on come to our church, get in your car and come to us.
Right.
And we would go to them, but only on like 2 mission trips a year, or we'd set up like that bi-monthly event where we would go into the community. Well, now we have the opportunity at little cost and little investment of time and creativity to go into the world using these platforms where attention is being paid, like I said, at scales that have never been seen before.
Yeah, honestly, Brady, I think you nailed it. I don't think there's much more I can say to that because it's this incredible opportunity we have now to share the gospel. We don't have to walk, miles from Athens to Rome anymore. We just have to get on the computer or get on our devices and use now the tools that are available to us. And it's an incredible opportunity. It's something that's exciting for me, and it shouldn't be scary technology. No. It shouldn't be controversial. This should be exciting for us because this really is a monumental shift in the way that we get to communicate this message of Jesus.
Final thing that I want to highlight is the way that Christians and the church has embraced technology over the years. There's always that initial phase where we reject it because it's new, unfamiliar, and thus feels uncomfortable and evil. But if we look over the centuries at each new phase of technology, we can see examples of Christians and churches who have seized that technology to share the message of Jesus. We'd say that we're living through the biggest communication shift in the last 500 years. That other crazy communication shift 500 plus years ago was the Gutenberg printing press.
Yeah.
The first Bible or first book ever printed was a Latin translation of the Bible. Yeah. And that allowed the every man and every woman to have a Bible in their hands to read the scriptures themselves.
It changed everything.
Fast forward to 1844, Samuel Morse sent the first telegraph message, which contained the sentence, "What hath God wrought?"
Not sure what that means, but it was in there.
It was in there. 1939, Theodore Epp started the radio program Back to the Bible. It's one of the most successful radio shows of all time. It's still heard today. 1957, Billy Graham starts Worldwide Pictures as a complement to his Billy Graham Crusade organization. This, of course, reached millions of people via television, and that wouldn't have been possible without the aid of technology. It's interesting when you look at early evangelists that kind of came before Billy Graham, Billy Sunday, Dwight Moody, and they were a lot more restricted in their outreach because during their crusades, they didn't have that type of technology. Right. And so, again, we are living through this amazing, privileged time where we have access to people and access to countries, really. We can share the gospel in ways that we never could before, thanks to technology. There's a strong biblical foundation for it. Don't be afraid of it. Dive right in. That'll do it for this episode of Pro Church Daily. We'll see you next time.
Hey, thanks for watching today's episode of Pro Church Daily. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel so you never miss another video, and hit that church bell so you get notifications.
And if you like this video, it really does mean the world to us if you go ahead and hit the thumbs up.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching today's episode of Pro Church Daily. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit that little church bell to get notifications.
And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. We can't use that.